everybody, and welcome to the Adult Chair on rashpixel.fm. I'm Pete Wright, and I am thrilled to be here once again with the lovely and talented Michelle Chalfant.
Hi, Pete.
How are you?
I'm really, really good, but I was really nervous about our guest today. I actually had to do my belly breath, and I'm not even joking. I was just doing it.
You're nervous? You're nervous?
The belly breath, yeah.
Well, I'm really excited about our guest today, too. We are continuing our conversation on sitting with our emotions today, and we have a guest whose work in this area pulls from a number of methodologies that will help us to transform the way we process what we are feeling. First, head over to theadultchair.com to learn more about this show. You can subscribe for free by signing up for the mailing list, or find us anywhere the finest podcasts are served with a quick search for The Adult Chair. You can join the conversation on Facebook or Twitter. We would love to hear from you. Today, we welcome Dr. Dodge Rea to the show. He is an integrative clinical psychologist, teacher, and guide in Nashville. He is co-founder of the Lotus Center, a holistic health center there, and he's the originator of what has become known as the Grace Sequence, which he has taught to various groups and organizations, including the One River Wisdom School, as well as individuals for about 10 years now. I can't believe that. He is here to share some of his grace with us today. Dodge Rea, welcome to the Adult Chair.
Thanks, Pete. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Dodge.
I feel like we should get this part out of the way, too, that the cosmic coincidence that brings Dodge Rea to this show cannot be understated, that you two have paths that have crossed in lovely ways over the last, I don't know how long. When did you guys meet?
We met in a workshop, didn't we? Like maybe 7 years ago? We did brain spotting together, years ago.
You're right. Brain spotting workshop.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
wow,
you
that
guys
was a while back.
have this fantastic professional connection, and Dodge and I go back over 20 years, and he was the best man at my wedding.
You were the best man of mine.
We have seen the world together, and it is the strangest bit of coincidence that we all end up connected completely independent of each other. It's fantastic.
Yeah, because, Pete, I found you independent of Dodge.
Yes.
And it was so ironic that all of a sudden I'm like, hold on, how do you know Dodge Rea again? It was just crazy. So, this is a cosmic connection, no doubt.
It is, I will say, though. I have been trying to get Dodge on one of my podcasts for 10 years, and it is only Michelle that was finally able to make that happen. That's the whole reason I say that. As good of friends as we are, he still would not join me on a podcast. So
he likes me better.
This is what I'm thinking. This is how it comes out. So I am sitting with my emotions today. Dodge, let's talk a little bit about what this Grace Sequence thing is, and I know it is an acronym. You always write it all caps. So talk a little bit about what it stands for, what it means, and how you came to it.
About 10 years ago, I was working with a guy as essentially his adjunct trauma therapist. His own therapist had her hands very much full with his present life and called me up and said, you do a lot with trauma, and this guy has just got a horrifically painful past. Could you help him? So he and I began working together as my last appointment on Fridays, back when I was working on Fridays. And for, I don't know how long, 9 months or a year maybe, we had worked together on just one really exquisitely painful memory after another. And we were making really good progress. And when I do that, it's not standard EMDR or kind of straight up psychotherapy. I mix together lots of different ways of understanding people. And for really all my life, but especially my adult life, I've always been fascinated by people in their body form, in their mind form, in their spirit form, and have been fascinated by breath, have studied Eastern traditions for a long time, along with the doctorate in psychology, and I'm a practitioner of medical Qigong. And so all of these things have a way of mixing together in ways that make for kind of unusual therapy. So he came in one day and he said, Doc, this really sucks, but I am going to have to move, and I'm going to have to move really soon. And when I get there, I'm not going to have any money, and I'm feeling sad and scared about that. And though I've made a lot of progress with you, I don't feel done. And we had made a whole lot of progress, and I thought he probably actually was going to be just fine. But I said, there are trauma therapists there. And he said, no, really, when I get there, I won't have enough money and it won't be you. So could you create some kind of, to-go box or something for whatever we've been doing so that I could just do this for myself?
There's nothing that really celebrates the value of therapy than calling it a to-go box, is there?
Right. And And I don't know if he actually used that phrase, but it's exactly what he meant. Like, he really just wanted, like, is there some cream I could apply to my face that would make me feel better every Friday, like you have made me feel? The answer, of course, was no. And I was going to say that. And I tried to say that. And what came out was, I'll try. And he said, good, because you have a week. And I was like, great. I have a week to come up with the thing that every therapist has been advised never to send their client away with, because it's not supposed to work. Yet I could just see this guy really meant it and wasn't taking no for an answer. And so I went away and prayed a little bit and had a good meditation about it. And what arrived was sort of this fully formed notion that maybe I could teach him this. And I couldn't think of anything else to say. I mean, it was like a locked file. There was nothing I could do to alter it. And I tried for a week, but that's all that could come to me. And so that's what I taught him. He found it very helpful. In fact, he kind of laughed, gosh, why didn't we just start with this? I could have saved myself a lot of money, which was good news, and off he went, and he would write me from the Midwest to say, man, it's still working really well. I cleared this one. And do you remember that whole thing about my, this part of my past? Well, I've been working on that and it's really getting a lot better. And I just thought, man, that's really amazing. Thank goodness it worked. But it never occurred to me for a long time that it could be anything but a distant second to the kind of work we could do in the office, until about 2 years ago, a client I'd worked with in almost every form of therapy I do, couples, group, lots of individual, lots of direct trauma stuff, had a particular trauma that he could not seem to shake. And we were cleaning up everything about his childhood. His marriage was improving dramatically. All kinds of things were getting better, but this one thing wouldn't shift. So finally, I taught him what I'd taught the other guy, because we were kind of running out of good options. And within 2 weeks, he cleared a memory that we had not been able to clear in 4 years of working together. At which point, I really started to take this seriously in a different kind of way. Eventually, I taught it to Gordon Pierman, a friend of mine and a mentor of mine who runs Insight Nashville. And one way or another, he encouraged me to come and teach it at the One River Wisdom School. And so that's where it finally, after 10 years, came time to name it. So I spent some time talking with friends about, okay, so what are the basic elements and how could I name this? And somebody pointed out, if you think about it, the steps of this process spell the word grace, if you just rearrange the words a little bit. And sure enough, they do. And it's a process of grounding yourself, of reaching to touch where you're experiencing something in the body, of allowing that experience to get bigger and more so, of connecting that to some sense of a loving, holding environment, a resource for you, and then elevating that experience by including some bilateral movement of the eyes. So we can talk about what all of that means, but that's where the word grace came from and how it was named.
So, Michelle, you and Dodge connected on this, and you immediately called me and said, so you know about this grace thing, right? Why did this suddenly make such an impact for you? What is the context that we are talking about this today?
Well, I'm always on the hunt for really for great tools or techniques to help people shift and to help them back in their adult chair, really. And when Dodge and we were out to lunch, I think, and you talked to me about this and showed me this technique, and I was really blown away, and I loved it, and it resonated. And I said, "Oh my gosh, we have to get this out there." And Dodge hesitated at first, and then did say yes, because it's absolutely amazing. It shifted me at the lunch table when I was sitting with you, Dodge, and it was so powerful yet so easy, which I love. I love that.
Well, and it connects to what we've been talking about, right? It's this whole idea of how we move through our, these negative emotions. And Dodge has used the word trauma a number of times, dealing with some specific traumas. And that's my understanding, right? That you're dealing with specific issues, not so much more sort of generalized behavior or emotional response, right?
For this particular this technique?
Right.
Well, not necessarily. What's beautiful about it is that you can use it in so many different ways. And the reason I call it a sequence instead of a technique or a practice, though it's both of those, depending on whether you're using it with yourself or with somebody else, it's really a series of steps of how to guide your attention through almost anything at all. We tend to use it with things that are difficult or painful or scary or overwhelming, but you really can apply them to deepen even positive feelings. It can be very helpful for entrenched patterns. It's wonderful for habits. It's really useful as a way to address panic. I've seen a number of people curiously come to me with panic issues and hardly ever have them again. It's been quite fascinating. Yeah. So one woman had heard about the work I do and said, I'm visiting from Atlanta. Is there a chance I could stop in to see you? And I said, sure, I've got space tomorrow. And she said, I've got a huge thing I'm going to be working with. Could I book out a series of, intensives with you, 3-hour blocks? And so we set up a whole bunch of things, including that one introductory hour we were going to do the next day. And she came in to work on that thing. And, I was mostly there to get information from her, but ended up saying, let me just put this computer down for a second and just guide you a little bit to work with this. It went very well. She had something really huge move for her, and she came back to me by email, I think the next day or a few days later. No, actually it was at least a full week later. And she said, I don't know what to do here because we've got these appointments set up and I really love the first one we had, but I can't find anything like that in me anymore. Like, I haven't had that experience ever since that first session. What do you think? Do we have to do these intensives? And all I could say was, not at all. If that's gone away, then let's let that go away. But I think the gist of this is to get people to move toward their experience instead of away from it. And that can be pretty life-changing for people sometimes. So really then, would you say that, I heard you say we can even use it for positive experiences, but when we're talking about the other experiences, it wouldn't, like Pete was saying, it's not just trauma, it's try it on anything. Yeah, it's trickier when you're using it on something besides the feeling you're having right now. And so that would take some guidance and is probably beyond what we could do in an hour. But I'd really like to give workshops about this. And I've done that with groups I've worked with. Like, so when sometimes we'll create a grace group and they'll come together and study it for a number of months. One worked together for about a year. And we got to all kinds of neat stuff. So we could work on, so when you think of something in the future that scares you, let's process where that is in your body. If you think about something you really want in the future, notice the part of you that really wants it and also the part that's scared. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah, yeah. And you can imagine if some part of your body is physically recoiling from the thing you're sure you want, some big dream of yours, that your body's probably going to win. Definitely. So until you go and clear that, you will have some part of you that is fighting you against this thing you want. Yep. That's just a notion of how you might get to that kind of thing too. And then how do you use it for positive? So if you want to reinforce something that's positive, how does that work? Well, let's back up and just talk about kind of how the whole thing works for a second and then see if we can make more sense of it. A friend of mine who is himself Buddhist came to me, really just got my attention over lunch as we're sitting there together and said, I've been thinking about you and I have a different way of understanding how your grace sequence works that might be useful for you. He shared with me the notion of samskara. Samskara is this idea that we store in our physical bodies unfinished experiences. So if our mission as a soul is to walk this world in such a way that we are so open and so non-resistant that our bandwidth would allow the full range of human experience, so much so even that we might even welcome it as divine, right? That we could feel everything from frightened to scared to furious to happy to love to bliss to exquisite pleasure and gratitude, right? That we are meant to be in our bodies and fully in our breath through that whole experience. But for all of us, until we become enlightened, that's hard. That's impossible, in fact. We can't quite let all of it in, right? So he was saying, so what we do is we hold our breath and we end up storing it in our energy field, so to speak. We store it in our physical bodies and we can access it again later in our physical bodies in that way. But we then continue to set up experiences in our lives to bring that back out of us. So we will find ways to pick a relationship or a circumstance or a person where once again we feel almost exactly like that first thing that got stuck. Often we'll get too overwhelmed and we'll block that too. But if we can stay in our breath and stay in our experience, we begin to release that. And when we do, it's as though all of the energy wrapped up in that experience and holding it away from us is released from escrow and comes back into our field. We are energized by this experience, which is why so many people, after doing the grace sequence, have got a look of much more than relief. There's a joyful sort of return to self. What you'll often hear me say as I'm working with somebody in this way, we'll start with what's difficult. Let's say it's anger that's showing up in the chest. It may start as tight, but a few layers in, that will start to relieve and then start to feel better. We might even start to feel peaceful. And you'll often hear me say to them, it takes as much courage to feel the expansive feelings as the contracted ones. It takes as much courage to feel the expansive feelings as the contracted ones. There's a part of us that it's like we're afraid to climb a tree because we're sure we're going to fall. Right. We don't want to feel that good. You can start with any feeling at all, including one that feels really good, like love that scares you, or celebration that's almost overwhelming, or physical pleasure that feels like it should be against the rules. Who knows? Like some version of this is too much, and just join it where it is. And our basic philosophy when working with this is we either have our feelings or they have us. That's a pretty good summary of samskara, right? We either have our feelings or they have us. So we can move into joy in the same way we might move into sadness or fear by just saying, where do you feel that in your body? And what's it like to breathe into that and let it get bigger? And what if you had loving company around you that fully accepted you exactly as you are, feeling that? A lot of times people cry the hardest right there, because so many of us have grown up with some message that says, if I feel too good, I'll get corrected. Somebody will pull me up short.
What does it look like when it's not working for somebody? When you have somebody who struggles to find that place?
And do you mean during the application? I mean, during the technique when using it with somebody?
Well, and I'm speaking a little bit out of school, because we've had conversations where you talk about, this in this case, it was tough for this person where they were struggling to actually kind of open up or to achieve. Like, what are the red flags that you should be aware of going into it where it's hard?
Let me just say, as we start to talk about using it as a technique, I'm going to get to your great question in a second here. So you can think of this as a practice that you can use for yourself, or eventually with training, it becomes a really useful technique to use with other people. It's a beautiful way to guide other people. I generally encourage people, quite strongly even, not to wander into that until they've learned a little bit about it and practiced it a bit themselves, quite a bit themselves. And I'd really encourage you to come in some way to a training, because what I've noticed is it can get passed down in ways that aren't quite right. And I get feedback later from somebody down the chain, and we'll hear from them, hey, that really sucked. What was this technique you came up with that my therapist was using on me?
And why is it so wrong?
Right. What did your therapist do? It's like, oh, well, no wonder that hurt. No, that's not how this works.
Is the E really electrodes?
Right. E is not stand for high electricity.
No.
What's true about all of us, even when we have a useful tool, is overwhelming feeling is overwhelming feeling. It can be really hard to have that. And so there are times where sometimes I can only get to a little bit at a time. I have to come with several passes of this before the grace sequence works for me, even after 10 years of playing with this. It's much easier when someone else is present sometimes. My goal for everybody is to work up to a place where they can do this for themselves anytime they want to. But sometimes, even with somebody present, it's pretty scary to access big feelings. So if I'm sitting with somebody and I notice we're getting stuck, it's usually because they're really in their heads and they're really committed to this idea of, I have to stay in control of this experience or it will eat me alive. And so it's very frightening if I say, could we just pause a second and just notice where you're feeling that in your body? If people are really cut off from their bodies, like really jammed into their left brain, the left brain can't access your internal experience. You have to switch to the right side, which is part of why this works so well. And sometimes they don't want to. And so we have to come back at it kind of gently. I don't push this on anybody, and it's certainly not the only way I work, but I do have a goal of teaching any client who's open to it to use this for themselves because it's useful. Sometimes people will get stuck because they're not done telling the story. They're still really invested in it, which is maybe another way to say the first part. And that's fine. I'll listen some more. Sometimes they get stuck if there's really strong ADHD elements to their experience. They have practiced for a long time a whole network of how to jump away from something that's starting to feel hard. And so it's difficult to stay present. I will say it's a whole lot easier than mindfulness for somebody who's got ADHD because it's sort of an applied mindfulness. It gives you something to do and it continues to send your attention back
focus on
to your internal experience. But sometimes that can get in the way for folks too, especially when they leave the office and it's time to go practice. Does that help?
Yes, it absolutely does. And I think, for those who are listening saying, okay, so what is it? Maybe you could walk us through it.
Let's do a quick just demo for each of you. We won't do the whole thing, but I just want to demonstrate a fundamental concept here that we can't change what we won't join. All right? So find a place in your body, and this would be for all your listeners as well, where you're feeling a little tense. And if you don't have one, think of the opposing political party for just a second and notice what happens. Right? Traffic will do the trick, anything you like. But find a place in your body where you just find yourself feeling a little tense. What do you got so far?
Well, you hit me with that political party thing. That was okay.
Right.
Yeah.
That'll work.
I've
right.
got knots in my stomach, Dodge.
Okay. Good. So I'm just going to ask you to do what you typically probably ask yourself to do, which is stop it. For God's sake, we're all friends here. There's no reason for you to feel tense. That's ridiculous. I mean, you're well-functioning people. Why would you feel tense about the opposite political party? I mean, seriously. Let it go. How's it going? Is that working? Anyone feeling better?
Of course it's not working.
Right?
No.
The words are there. The words are there.
Right?
Yeah.
You agree with me.
Yeah.
Right? And yet, what is your body doing?
Getting tenser.
Yeah. Getting tenser. And I carry it right in my shoulders, right? Because now you're telling me to avoid something that's important to me.
Yes. And this is what we say to ourselves when we think, I shouldn't be feeling this way. This is bad. I really should stop feeling this way. So let's try it the other way. So focus on that tension for a minute and come back to your breath. Just take a full breath in and let it come out slowly. And I'd like you to just invite that tension to get bigger. Give it full permission to just come on in and stay a while. It's okay. And just be curious about what it does next. What do you notice?
It's just expanding.
Good.
You just said just to expand it out.
Yeah,
right?
I'm just saying, just let that feeling be whatever it needs to be. Give it full permission.
Expanding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What does expanding mean? Is it getting more tense?
No, it's coming up through the rest of my body, though.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Like a balloon expanding. That's kind of what it feels like.
Good. What are you noticing, Pete?
I just have this vision in my head of what was just acute tension across my top of my shoulders is now just like you can imagine. If you're looking at kind of infrared, it's just the heat map of that tension. It's not acute anymore. It's just kind of swelling across my back.
Yeah.
Just bigger. Yeah.
Good. All right. So keep breathing for a minute. Long, slow exhale, and just continue to give that tension permission to be here if it wants to be. Good. What's it doing now?
Disintegrating?
Mm-hmm.
I don't have another word. It's like kind of as it gets bigger, it kind of the outsides start to evaporate a little bit. If that's, I don't even know the word. Kind of going away.
Mm-hmm. Sure. It just sort of runs out of steam.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So isn't that strange? That the more you tell it to stop, the bigger it gets. The more you tell it to be as it wants to be, invite it even to get bigger, the more it diffuses. I think we need to know more about this. This might be a fundamentally important misunderstanding that most of us have, that if we try hard enough, we can defeat our internal experience. And believe me, I have tried the hell out of that for 45 years, and it's not working.
Right.
What's working so much better than that for me is to find some way to join it. Obviously, I'm not the originator of that idea. The entire practice of Buddhism, in many ways, concentrates on that very thing. Can we bring kindness and compassion to our internal experience and to everyone else's while we're at it? In fact, there's nothing about the grace sequence that's original. All of these are off-the-shelf parts, you might call them. What's cool, though, is that they aren't normally put together in quite this way. So let's see if we could work with something a little bit bigger with one of you, and I'll just show you kind of how it works.
Okay.
All right. You want to go, Michelle?
Volunteer. Yes, I will volunteer.
All right.
This is new.
This is new.
I'm on the receiving end for a change. Normally it's Pete.
Normally it's Pete the guinea pig.
I will be the guinea pig. Okay.
All right.
I'm ready.
All right. So you don't have to share the personal details of what's going on, but let's see if we can give it kind of an original name. You know, it's a belief, it's a feeling, it's a thing. What have you got that we're starting with?
I want to pick one that still comes up for me that I know also a lot of other people have. And it just came to me actually. So it wasn't intended that I would do this, but this just kind of occurs to me. That whole feeling of, if I think, again, it might not be true, but if I think that someone might be mad at me, then it's that codependency that still bites me in the butt sometimes. It just comes up and, oh my God, sometimes I just shut down, or it's this panicky feeling of, I just don't want people mad at me. Again, I am much better with it. I've worked with it for years, but it still comes up sometimes for me. And oftentimes it's perceived. I might not, and if I ask that person, hey, are you mad at me? They're like, what are you talking about? And oh, okay, then it's gone. But what I go through physically and mentally is not fun. So could we work with that one?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be great. Okay.
With traditional psychotherapy, lots of forms of it anyway, with lots of conversation with friends, with lots of our own way of handling this, and I bet you've done this 1,000 times already, we'd want to go to why. Like,
sure.
Why are you so scared of that? And then we'd want to go to, oh, well, now that I know that reason, I'm going to talk you out of it.
Right.
Right? We'd find some sophisticated way to either avoid or defeat this process. So let's do the opposite today. And let's just say we're going to start with an idea that it's really okay that you feel that way, even though you don't want to.
Right. Okay.
And the temptation is to use the grace sequence in order to outsmart our feelings. Like, okay, so I'm going to join them so that I can defeat them, right? We're going to even set that aside. And we're going to see if we can use this with an idea that, so life is forever expanding and contracting. Every bit of it is. And we're moving from expansive feelings to contracted feelings. That will always be so. This is just going to help you be in the contracted ones and stay conscious and not so reactive.
Love it.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So start with that idea that you have when people are really angry at you. It sounds like it scares you, hurts.
Yeah, it's both. It's not only people in my, inner circle, but in the business that I'm in,
sure.
Having this feeling and having to put myself out into the world on a podcast, on Facebook, in a blog. Sometimes I get so scared. What if I get a negative comment and everybody says, you're going to get them? I'm like, oh, but it's like, so it paralyzes me sometimes.
Yeah.
But I keep going. But so my stomach's in knots, even talking about it, like, uh-oh.
Good.
Yeah.
So as we start to ground that experience, that means we come back into its physical form. I want you to take a breath in through the top of your head and down through your feet. This is sort of an ancient Taoist way of breathing that can be really rooting. And I want you to go touch where you're feeling that in your body. I think I heard you say stomach in knots. Good. So as you place your hands there, think of Matt Kahn's phrase, when you feel that way, you deserve more love, not less. And I want you to touch that in the same way you would have held one of your kids when they were really little and they couldn't possibly deal with a stomach in knots. And you didn't talk them out of it. You didn't explain it away. You didn't yell at him for it. You just picked him up. So that's G and R. Ground, reach. And now I want you to just allow it to get bigger. If it wants to. Allow it to be its full self.
The positive feeling or the negative feeling? Which one? Or either one?
Both. Yep. So we're, of course, doing this slowly because I'm explaining as we go. But as you go to allow that stomach to be in knots. And if you're already beginning to feel relief as you're breathing and allowing and touching with kindness, then feel that too. Good. What are you noticing so far?
It was interesting. It was like a little bit of a battle inside. Like there was the love. It almost felt very separate.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was the tension in my stomach and then the love. And then they started blending together.
Yeah.
And now it feels lighter. It feels, like almost like a white cloud that's just expanding out in my stomach area now. And I don't feel the knots.
Yeah.
It's like love won. I don't have another way to say it. It's like, yeah.
Yeah. So let's pause here for just a moment and notice what's beautiful about this sequence is you don't need all 5 steps. And when you're doing it efficiently, they often congeal together in beautiful and efficient ways. But we've just grounded in your body, taken a full breath down through your feet, and with love, allowed yourself to have your experience while touching it physically. That's really important. And already it's moving a lot.
Yeah, it's definitely different.
Yeah, good.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like, but the negativity feels like it pushed back and it's like, if I could draw a picture of what it looks like. Like now it feels like the love is in the front and the negativity went behind it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's just
Good.
moving around.
It's going great. Yeah, all of that's okay. And if it had gotten gigantic, that would be fine. It's really okay.
Okay.
All right. So next I want to ask, can you tell me what is the most loving force you can think of in the universe for now? Not for all time, just for now. It could be God. It could be guides and angels. It could be light itself. One woman just this morning gave me permission to share that from childhood on, she's always seen the divine in the moon because her parents would yell at her, often physically abuse her, and she would go outside and the moon was always there waiting for her.
Oh, I love that.
And when she would travel in a car, the moon would always follow just her. And if she walked in the woods, the moon would always just follow along just her. And so that was the most loving force she could think of.
Okay. I have so many things zipping through my mind. I first thought of my father. I felt so loved by my dad. And then I think about when you said the moon, I thought about the water because I grew up on the lake and that was like my place of meditation. But I also think of my angels around me and God. And I don't know. They're all there. They're all here.
Good.
Do I have to pick one?
Find a way to personify it that that feels most connected to the infinite and divine. So it doesn't have kind of the personal stuff of dad in it, unless it were
gotcha.
kind of his higher self or him from the other side or something.
I would say, you want it like God? Can I use God?
Sure.
Okay.
Yep. So we'll come back to your body now that we've got that one. And tell me, what are you experiencing there so we can catch up with where it is currently?
It feels like it's settling in.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the words that come to my mind. Just sort of settle down because we weren't focusing on it maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Would do that. And think again about somebody being angry with you. And what happens next?
It comes up again. It's all tense again.
Good.
Tension.
And where is it feeling tense? And how?
Still in my stomach again. It comes right back to my stomach area.
Good. All right. So we'll do that again. We'll take that full breath for each of these steps down through your feet. Touch that with much love. And allow it to get bigger. Allow it to be what it needs to be right now. Thich Nhat Hanh would say, Oh, fear, my old friend, there you are again. I will take good care of you.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And now I'd like you to imagine that God were to come and make eye contact with you with such love and the slightest twinkle of humor, because God's not worried about you. God knows you're safe even when you don't, and would pour energy into that very place in your tummy. And breathe through that. And now I want you to take what's there in your hands and hold that up at about shoulder height and about shoulder width with your palms facing up. Yeah, it can be a little below shoulder height, but not in your lap. Yeah, there you go. And I want you to imagine that you've just held up what you're having in its authentic form for God, and you're just saying, thank you for being here with me in this. You might even say that out loud, and especially when you're by yourself, I'd encourage you to do it out loud. Yeah, and now move your eyes back and forth between your palms. Left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. Good. And that's enough. Just a long breath or two, moving your eyes back and forth. And then we'll begin again. And you can just drop your hands and we'll begin again with, so what do you notice now? Let's get current with what's really happening this second.
I don't feel anything. The knots are gone.
The knots are gone. That fast. So what do you feel instead?
It's like spacious and open in my stomach area instead of heavy and knotted up.
Good. I want you to touch that. I want you to bring spaciousness and openness, love, more love, not less. And let it get bigger and more so, just like you did with the other. And remember, it takes as much courage to do the expansive ones as the contracted. We want to just say, oh, I must be done, and avoid them. So breathe into that, down through the floor. And let God come into that, making sweet eye contact with you, again with that little twinkle of humor, and pour light right into that place. And now raise that up and say, God, thanks for being with me in this. Now, for somebody else, it might not be God. It might be the moon. It might be an oak tree they loved or a golden retriever from childhood. That would work just fine. But for you today, it's God. So we'll just call it God. All right. And the palms will elevate now, bringing just the sincerity of this. Sometimes that's all we've got. And your eyes can go back and forth, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. Now, for everyone at home, be aware that it's when we start to get stuck and we're processing big feelings, our eyes will stare at one of those two hands and we'll be thinking left, right, and our eyes aren't moving at all. It happens all the time in my office. And I have to say, just pay attention to those eyes. Are you seeing both hands? This is why I ask you to do it with hands, because you can think you're moving your eyes, but you're not noticing your left hand at all. And that means you're not moving. There you go. Good. What are you noticing now?
Just really expanded.
Good.
Expanded out. Light. I feel very light.
So with every single answer I get, whether it's a thought or a concept or kind of a big, beautiful label like expanded, I'll just keep asking people to ground it. What does expanded feel like in your body? Or what does I feel like I could jump, I could fly? What does that feel like in your body?
Okay.
Try and get really specific. So what does expanded feel like right now in your body?
I feel like a moon. Like it feels just white and big, and it feels like the moon. Like I'm like really big, like a humongous balloon.
Yes. Beautiful. Good. And if you and I could switch bodies for just a moment, what sensations would I have feeling as big as a moon right there, like an expanded balloon?
Like open, lighthearted, confident comes to my mind, which is kind of crazy.
Good.
Love. I feel the word just love come through me.
Yes. Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
All right.
That's so cool.
Place your hands where you feel that. We'll do one more round. It might be outside your body. Sometimes, especially toward the later rounds, I'll feel it way out in the field around me.
Yeah, that's how I feel. Like I weigh like outside of me. Almost I want to extend my hands as far as they'll go.
Good.
So, okay.
Breathe into that, in through the top of your head and down through your feet, and let God fill that whole space. And now place those hands out in front of you, and especially when it's expanded, I'll place them out pretty wide.
Mm-hmm.
And move your eyes back and forth with a thought or words. God, thank you for being with me in this. Good.
Great.
So I know we're running short on time, but can you give us just a little feedback about how that compares with what normally happens when you think of people being angry with you?
Now are you asking me now when I think about people being angry with me?
Yeah, or just how that process compares with the normal sequence of events when you have that thought of, someone might be mad at me. I'm guessing it doesn't go to expansive like that.
No, definitely not. This feels so gentle and loving. And no, the other feels rigid and, I get exhausted. And this is the exact opposite of how it would normally feel.
Yeah.
Like this feels, I can't believe I keep saying the word, I feel confident. It's coming out of left field. I'm like, wait a minute. It's crazy.
Isn't that weird? I mean, I have done this, I don't know how many thousands of times, and regularly I'm just like, I can't believe it works like that. And it so often does. It's remarkable.
I really feel like I've shrunk down the moon and it's sitting like in my third chakra here, like in my belly button here. It's just like there's something big and white down there that is expanded out and just very happy and sitting there.
Awesome.
Awesome. God, thank you, Dodge. That was so great.
I can't tell you how beautiful it is to watch that. For those at home, we're actually, you're hearing the audio, but we're actually on Skype video kind of looking at each other. And it is a really beautiful experience to watch that. I appreciate you both very much for letting me watch this experience. And Michelle for not making a mess of me. Let
me tell you, when he said, think of that person that, you feel love or loving, I almost lost it. I'm like, okay, because you do. I felt so much love come through me. I wanted to sob. Yeah. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I can't sit and sob.
Yeah.
That
really
was
beautiful.
Awesome.
By far, most of the time when I see people cry or when I cry myself doing this, it is tears of feeling loved, of gratitude.
Yes, definitely.
Yes.
Two more brief questions, if you will, Dodge. The first is first of all, I love the way you present this because you are as the originator of it. You do it regularly. One would expect after 10 years that you would be sort of an expert at it, and yet the way you approach it is like you've just been introduced to it every single day. It is like this sense of kind of wonder and frivolity that I really appreciate. That is really fantastic. How often do you find yourself using this and I'm asking both as a solution to help you through these negative emotions or these things you want to process, and as a practice? How often do you find yourself turning to the grace sequence?
I try to do it every day. I try, especially when I meditate. It profoundly deepens meditation in my experience and that of others who also meditate. And so I'll do it before I do Tai Chi or before I do TM or anything else that I might practice that day. And I try to just kind of sit down with what's my current experience, like where am I today? Or what do I want from this day? And is there any part of me that's resisting that? And then I just work with, so what's coming up there? Weird. That's kind of stuck in my right shoulder. I don't know what that's about, but I'll just breathe and join it as it is and see what happens next. And I just keep following it. And I'll do as many rounds as it takes to get to a place where I feel what I think of as undifferentiated joy. It feels like a very expanded version of joyful, not a pointed version of I'm happy because. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So Michelle's was a perfect example of that. And very often people are like, wow, I feel like I can't even get my arms around this. It's like the whole moon is right here in my body. I hear it all the time. So yes, it's amazing. So cool. Yeah. So something huge happens there. And I try to do it every day. And sometimes I don't, it's like any practice. I can go a big chunk of time without doing it and wonder why I'm so out of whack. And then I'll go, duh. Come back to that, and I feel much better.
Dodge Rea, thank you so much for your time today. We so appreciate your teaching.
My pleasure. Really appreciate your inviting me.
This was a true gift, Dodge.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for downloading and listening to the show. We so appreciate you and hope that this example serves as a model for you in working through some of your own processing of emotions. Thank you so much. On behalf of Dodge Rea and Michelle Chalfant, I'm Pete Wright, and we'll catch you next week right here in the Adult Chair.